All right. I am Jeffrey Rickman, and this is the PlainSpoken podcast. I started doing this several months ago, hoping to be a conservative voice in the mix of Methodism to try and discern a way forward. There are many people who are working their way out of the United Methodist Church, many who are already out, many who are in the discernment process on the way out. I'm trying to give good information for making good decisions for individuals and for local churches. And a lot of times I report on what's going on in annual conferences or churches, but I also have a heart for clergy. I am one. I was a local licensed pastor in the United Methodist Church. Now I'm an ordained elder in the Global Methodist Church, and I have a vested interest in serving alongside clergy in the coming years who are healed, who are understand what happened in the United Methodist Church, and who are holistically seeking the image of Christ Jesus and not permanently damaged. I wrote a Substack article on my 12-year journey through ordination. There were many opportunities to get jaded and damaged, and by God's grace, I was seen through all of that. Today, I'm talking with Reverend John Nadasi, who's up in Montana, and he's a recent Global Methodist Church elder as well, who also, I'll let him use his own words, but as I think I understand some of his story, he also encountered a lot of hostility and challenge from the United Methodist Church that we're hoping is going to be different in the Global Methodist Church. So, John, thank you so much for making time to sit down with me. How are you today?
Good, Jeffrey.
Well, you recently had shoulder surgery, so how bad is that pain today?
Um, it's there, but I should get the use of my arm back, so it's just a matter of going through it.
I reckon
It's
that's
not,
what that strap is about on you.
yeah, I
Yeah.
have a torn rotator cuff.
Well, thanks for toughing it out. We only started. We'd been friends on Facebook for forever because I think we liked each other's posts, but we hadn't really ever talked until I started this podcast. And then
hmm
you've been affirming of what I've been trying to do and gracious of all my many mistakes. And I've just appreciated your encouragement. And when I found out you were from the Mountain Sky area, of course, that's overseen by Karen Olivito. And I learned just the bare basics from you, just that it was a hostile environment there, that you were essentially, there was a hostile takeover over of your church, and it seemed to me that yours would be a good story to hear. Just hearing a guy with his eyes open who has been trying to process how the United Methodist Church does and does not work. So we were chatting briefly before this, thought it would be good just to get a sketch of who you are. So, and I personally don't know much about you, John. So maybe you could 5-10 minutes give us a sketch of who you are and where you come from and what informs who you are today.
Sure. Grew up in Vandalia, Ohio. Um, I should say that this week is the first week of my life that I'm not a United Methodist.
Mm.
I was born into the church. I was baptized into the church. I've spent my entire life as a United Methodist up until about a week ago. I got my paperwork in from the Global Methodist Church that my membership has changed, and I'm indeed an elder now in the Global Methodist Church. I'm not sure quite what that means yet. I think there's only one other person in Montana that has disaffiliated, so I'm not sure if he's bishop or if I'm bishop. Uh, um, but we're getting it figured out right now. Who goes where and what. But as of right now, I'm on sabbatical. Um, that well, for almost a year, and I've been without a break in ministry for over 20 years,
Oh, wow.
and I'm ready for a break.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
ready for a sabbatical. So I'm not crying about taking some time away from the pulpit. I'm okay with that.
How long have you
Uh,
been in the pulpit?
I graduated seminary in '99, so 22 years,
Okay.
and I've never missed more than one Sunday in a row in 22 years. And so this has been an experience being outside of the church. I live in Miles City now. There's a United Methodist Church that I show up to from time to time, but they've asked me to preach, and I'm not sure that I don't know what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do right now with having transferred my membership into the Global Methodist Church. I'm not sure that that's something that I should do.
Well, that's for the church to worry
So
about, not you. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be preaching there. But if there's not a lot of
it,
other clergy to call upon, then I mean, what are the options? So,
well, as of right now, they've got a different preacher every Sunday. Is how they're doing their church, and it's like many other Methodist churches. It's hanging on by a thread.
is this the one that you most recently served?
No,
Okay.
I moved to Miles City. I'm in Miles City now. I actually have a small business, and that's what pays the bills and keeps us alive. And Miles City was kind of a central location. It made sense for us to be there. So
What's
we've
your
moved.
small business? Do you want to plug what you do?
I can tell you,
Yeah.
I have I'm a certified residential appraiser.
Oh,
And so when people go to buy a house, they need an appraisal. That's what the bank lends money on.
okay.
And been doing that for 7, 8 years.
Good for you.
Um,
So you started in Ohio. You were raised in Ohio. Did you do high school in Ohio?
yep, went to high school and college in Ohio.
What
High
college?
school, Vandalia Butler,
Okay.
and uh, college was the University of Toledo.
Okay. Okay.
Went to seminary in Kansas City at St. Paul School of Theology.
What was
Got my
your
master's.
undergrad degree in?
It was English.
Okay. So appreciation for the English language, drawn to homiletics when you went to seminary?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you have an emphasis in your MDiv?
No.
Okay. So you got your MDiv from Ohio, and then when did you meet your wife?
No, I got my MDiv from Kansas City.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you did undergrad in Ohio, and then you went to Kansas City for your MDiv.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and then did you meet your wife while there?
Nope. My first appointment, I was in Eads, Colorado, and the United Methodist women were going to see to it that I had a wife. And they were in the process of trying to hook me up with the girl from the hog farm. And I decided I better get online and uh, do a little shopping of my own. Otherwise, I was going to end up with the girl at the hog farm. Maybe she was a delightful person. I have no idea. I never met her, but I panicked at that point, and my wife of 22 years met me under keyword Methodist. She was looking for a Methodist man because of the way we treat women. And she said, I'll never find anybody with this criteria. And she put in her keywords, and I'm the only person that popped out. So she didn't get a whole lot to choose from. But we've been married 22 years. We've got two kids, Reagan and Patton, my two daughters.
I'm not sure I've ever met a girl named Patton before. That's cool. Reagan and Patton.
Yep.
Is it over the president and the general? Is that what they're named for?
Yep.
So,
Figured the world's greatest president needed the world's greatest general to
how
back her up.
how old are they now?
16 and 13.
Oh gosh, that's the stage I'm fearing most. I have three girls and one boy, all 6 and under. So we'll.
Well, they go from being your shadow at the church, I
Mhm.
mean, literally uh, sitting in your lap and playing with your ears while they're tiny, to becoming little people. And then suddenly they become teenagers and they don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I'm dreading that. I love that they think I'm so cool right now because I know there's a day
That
coming where they're
changes.
just gonna be like, "Oh, Dad, oh, you're awful."
It changes when they become teenagers. It totally changes. They become little people,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that they weren't as children, but I mean you're dealing with a whole different person
Sure.
suddenly
Yeah.
uh, as they develop their adult personality and the fronts of their brains develop. Um,
Well,
no, it's wonderful. It's great being a dad.
I don't know, man. I love it so far. We'll see if God gives me grace for what's coming. Your wife and you have been married 22 years. You have two teenage girls. You've served how many churches in this time?
Well, if we count, do you want to count seminary where I was a
Yeah.
youth pastor
Yeah,
for
that
four
counts.
years?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a youth pastor for 4 years in Kansas City. I was in Eads, Colorado for 3 years or 4 years. Paonia, Colorado for 6 years, maybe.
Okay.
Rawlins, Wyoming for 6 or 7 years. And then my last appointment uh, was in Plentywood, Montana. I had Plentywood, Scobie, and Redstone. I had a 3-point charge,
Mm.
and that was considered part time.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I have a business to run too,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so my goal. I actually wasn't even planning on taking that appointment. It it was just one of those things that God and I were not on the same page, and um, when He said go, He said go, and
Right.
so I went. So I don't know what comes next for me. I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now.
All the churches have been rural and small.
Yes.
Okay. And so you've, for 22, well, longer than that, 24, 25 years. How long did you say you were in ministry? Since 1999?
Well, 99 is when I graduated from seminary,
Yeah.
so 95
Okay.
is.
Yeah. So, yeah, for almost the better part of 3 decades, you've been
Yep.
ministering in United Methodist Church. So you were born into the United Methodist Church. Was there ever a point at which you stepped outside of the Methodist denomination and then chose it? Like, oh,
Yes.
I love this about our heritage and I own this. So could you tell me a bit about that time and what it is you love about the Methodist heritage?
Well, I served when I was in seminary. I served as a youth pastor in an Episcopal church, and I also worked in an Episcopal hospital when I did my CPE program. And so I spent a lot of time around Episcopalians, and I really just loved everything about it. Started the postulancy process. The biggest reason that I remained United Methodist uh, um, was that in order to be ordained an Episcopal priest, I had to do one more year of seminary. And after the 4 years I had spent seminary, I figured if I did one more year of seminary, I wasn't going to be anything to anybody.
Mm.
Um,
It was tearing you apart?
seminary, did not care for seminary at
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
Um,
Tell me the
the
name of the seminary in
I
Kansas City.
St. Paul.
St. Paul. Okay. I feel like there's also a
St.
St. Paul religious school in Oklahoma. I want to say it's outside of Tulsa. But you don't, yeah.
No idea.
Okay. But St. Paul in Kansas City, am I right in assuming it was pretty far left and just theologically hostile?
I worked very hard at finding professors and doing independent studies in Wesleyan theology in order to, when I left the seminary, have an education.
Yeah.
Um, I would say 2/3 of the staff I would classify as highly liberal. Um, I mean, just some of the stuff that went on in seminary was just so ungodly.
Yeah.
I, you know,
I'm sure that you and I
I don't want to
experienced
sit
similar
and bash
things.
it because
Yeah.
it makes me look bad. Um, it, but seminary was not about getting closer to God.
Right. Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not the goal of seminary.
Hmm.
Uh, but I
When
I
you
did it. I got through it.
when you say you started the postulancy process, is that Episcopalian code for becoming clergy in the Episcopalian
Yes.
Church? Okay, all right. So you actually fell in love with the Episcopal Anglican tradition, but you stuck with the Methodist tradition because it was easier. But the question was there ever a point where you stepped outside and you chose Methodism? Well, and you did answer that. For practical purposes, you chose Methodism again. Is there anything about the Methodist tradition in particular, as over against other traditions, that you're like, yes, I am a Methodist? Your wife obviously thought that meant something in the context of marriage and how women are treated. Is there anything else pertaining to the cultural heritage of Methodism that you proudly own as a Methodist clergy?
Born in it, steeped in it, raised in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's just what I know.
I hear you. I think that's pretty common, man. So no bones here. I was an atheist in undergrad and had a strange experience with the Holy Spirit at the end of that, and then went to seminary to explore the God question. And it was there that I read Methodist history and polity, and there were several features about Methodism that I deeply admired and loved and feel passionately about today. So that's a big part of informing what I'm about. It seems to me that talk about where your passion lies in the local church, what it is that has motivated you and caught you on fire, kept your fire burning over the years. What is it about ministry that you love?
Um, the connection, being with people, um, uh, sacred moments, and sacred moments being around baptism and around death. Uh, I think death is one of the holiest moments that you can experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, the welcomeness of my children when they were in church, the um, there's a lot to love about Methodism. Um, I've never really sat and thought about it, to be honest with you. Um,
Yeah, and I'm sure we could spend a whole time on that, and maybe that's something that privately would be fun to do. I don't know. I do think that there is. Well, it's like when someone, so much of this breaking apart of the United Methodist Church has felt like a breakup to me. Before I got married, I dated a number of women. I don't agree that it's like a divorce because I don't think vows till death do us part were ever said, and so I don't think that applies. But I think it was a long-term dating, cohabitating scenario where finally some have said, I got to go. This is dysfunctional. I can't be with you no more. And then there's a temptation at that point to just demonize the other party and say everything was wrong. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's usually not the truth. The truth is there were a lot of good things
yeah,
that caused us to hold on as long as we did. There was a lot of promise, a lot of hope, and then there was just a moment of sobriety and saying it's just not going to happen. Did I tell you that I served in Oregon Idaho annual conference?
mm-mm.
Okay, I served a 3-point charge in the high desert region in the southern part of Idaho, so I know a little bit about the western United States milieu. I'm sure it's a little different in Montana, but I think I know more about the cultural environment that you've been in than a lot of people say on the East Coast or Midwest. And you're gonna fill out my knowledge more in this time. But you said you were raised in Ohio, but then you went to seminary in Kansas, but then you went to Colorado to do ministry, and then from Colorado, Montana, right?
Colorado to Wyoming and then Montana.
So how many annual conferences was that? Because I don't remember where the lines are
Well, it
drawn.
was just West Ohio, transferring over to what was the Rocky Mountain Conference, which is now Mountain Sky.
Yeah. Okay. So that was okay. So why did you transfer to that conference rather than going back to Ohio?
Wanted to go hunting.
Yeah, I see on Facebook you're a big hunter, and so how much time do you usually spend when your shoulder is working going hunting?
Oh, I make a couple trips a year.
Oh,
Just
okay.
depends on what I'm in the mood for.
Okay.
If I'm in the mood for bird hunting, I can just go out my door. I've got a German short-haired pointer named Dietrich Bonehopper, and he's 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 my buddy. He and I go out and find birds. Um,
Well, that's
uh,
fun.
but
So, do you live in the middle of a residential area, or do you like living out in the country?
I live out in the country, but it's only a couple miles. I've got a few acres, but I've got my own shooting range. I've got my own reloading room. I've got all my own. I don't know. It's my own space. If I tell people if I get bored, that's my own fault. I've got a garage full of toys. I have no reason in the world to ever be bored.
Yeah, you've told
So
us, yeah, at this point, people can gladly choose kind of a caricature in their head. This is a man who loves General Patton and President Reagan, loves his guns, loves hunting, has a beard. This all fits within a certain personality profile that somebody might look at you and go, how did he make it under Karen Olivito? To which the answer would be kind of that you didn't, right?
well, Karen and I actually got along.
Okay.
Um, the first time I met her, she visited every church in her conference.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah,
her.
she put the time in.
Hmm.
She visited every church, and when I went to meet her, I was expecting to be fired. I, a lesbian from California, what in the world could I possibly have in common with her?
Hmm.
And so we were going down the road. I told her I'd take her out, show her the farm. Um, and we were bouncing down the road in my pickup. And I said, Karen, I need to come out of the closet. Her eyes got big and she looked at me. I said, I'm a Republican.
Hmm.
And she started cracking up laughing. And she said, what does that even mean anymore? And so we ended up having a really good conversation. Karen and I got along fine. The issue for me wasn't about personalities. Me leaving the United Methodist Church wasn't a question of personalities.
Hmm.
I like Karen. Um, it was a question of theology. It was a question of not Bishop Karen or her ministry, but what's hiding behind her scares me. Uh, the I I've had LGs and Bs in my churches. I've never had a T. Um, Quite honestly, the T's are what scare me most. I think that it's insidious, um, bending apart uh, children to fit into this transgender ideology. I think it's sick.
Hmm.
Um, and what I see hiding behind her and coming in through the church is not godly.
And you
Um,
don't think that's something that she necessarily subscribes to. You just think that's something that she's associated with and doesn't necessarily have the discernment to identify.
now that I couldn't tell you, but there's never been any kind of teaching around it. See, what I was expecting was when she showed up was to say, here's the line,
Hmm.
a marriage is between a man and a woman, and we're going to move it this much.
Yeah.
We're going to include or faithful other. Um, I figured the line was going to move a little bit.
Yeah.
That's not what's happened. The line has just disappeared. There is no line. If it feels good, do it.
So if they had just moved the line to now, sex is not really an important factor whenever it comes to lifelong marital bonding. You could have lived with that, but the fact that there was
I
any
would have found a way to live with it.
okay, you
I
you would
would have
have
found a way
you
to
would have
live
been
with it.
uncomfortable with it, but you wouldn't have left over it.
Correct. I wouldn't have taught it.
You wouldn't have taught it. You wouldn't have ever participated in it. You would have had a problem had you been compelled to do it.
Correct.
Okay.
And I probably still would have been weeded out, because the way I ended up weeded out um, was the district superintendent called an emergency meeting for the church, and so I showed up for it, of course, and she put a LCD projector on the front pew, and shot the projector on the wall of a liturgy. Now, after 25 years of being in the Mountain Sky Rocky Mountain Conference, I've learned that I don't read anything from the conference until I've read it first.
Oh, you don't
I,
put
I
anything up. Yeah. Okay, I hear you.
I don't put anything up on the wall that I haven't read first. I don't read any liturgy out loud that I haven't read first. I don't do anything with any conference material unless I've had it and reviewed it first
Hmm.
before I put that in front of my people. And so this was one of those times where I was glad I waited. It was a pledge of allegiance to gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender ministries. And the people
Is
in the
that what it was
church,
literally called?
I don't know what it was called.
Okay, but it was
It was a
a vowing
liturgy.
of fealty.
Yeah, it was a liturgy specifically of lifting up the LGBTQIA plus ministries of the church. And my people in the church read it, and then I could tell right after they read it that there were a few of them that were just completely ticked off, that they felt like they had been had.
Mm,
It's like, that's why you read it first. You got to read it first, because the stuff that gets snuck into the our liturgy, is some of it is well, it's just not Christianity.
right.
It's
Yeah.
something else.
Right.
This revisionist, or reimagining is the word that they use.
Mm,
Reimagining old hymns, reimagining Jesus as our lover and brother, and reimagining uh, reimagining God as uh, whatever.
right.
And I'm not into reimagining God. I'm My goal is to be conformed into His image, not to conform Him into mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyway, I didn't read this liturgy. It was about a month later, the DS said she was coming back out to do my charge conference. It's like, okay, that's fine. I'd been in this church for 9 years, never had a problem there. Um, and suddenly the DS shows up and says, "You're going to be reappointed." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, the church and I, you've been here. The average is 7 years. You've been here 9 years. It's time to move."
Mm,
And my plan for moving was to stick with the church until it had gotten through this transition of the Global Methodist Church. If
hmm.
it were up to me, if it were up to my decision and what I wanted to have happen, I would still be in Plentywood, and I would be leading them through the disaffiliation process.
Hmm.
And uh, um, then after that, maybe I would be honestly, what I've needed forever is a break. And I had even put it in my paperwork for the charge conference that I was ready for a break.
Hmm.
But I was thinking sabbatical. I wasn't thinking, not serving a church.
Right.
I just needed a break.
Did she give you a name of
And
another church that she was wanting to send you to?
no,
Is how
no, I
likely
have
do you
no
think
idea
it
what I
was?
had no idea what they had in mind for me. I wasn't going to have any of it.
So it was in that conversation when she said that you had that clarity just to say, "Hey, don't appoint me anywhere. I need out."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I just said
So
I'm done.
one question I failed to ask was in Plentywood. That was the name of the church, right?
Mhm.
Were they conservative or liberal or something in between, something else?
Had three churches. Plentywood Church was, I would say, about 2/3 Republican,
Hmm.
1/3 Democrat. We, I didn't really do politics from the pulpit.
Sure.
Um, just try and get along with everybody on Sundays. These are people who've known each other for the last 70 years. They've been neighbors. The last thing we need to sit and fight about in church is politics, and so we didn't.
Good.
The um, Plentywood Church, at the time that I left, what was underneath it, where it found a toehold, where she found a toehold to come after me, and I've come across the same thing two or three times before. And so I know it's a chronic issue that clergy deal with that I was never taught how to deal with in seminary.
Hmm.
And that is when you're dealing with godly old people,
Hmm.
part of the change of their personality as they mature and get into their senior years, and I'm talking 80s, 90s, and up, is they become combative. Um,
Some of them, yeah.
some do.
Yeah.
Some become very combative and combative towards everybody, including the church.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And and it's what came up again in Plentywood. I had one person, and I don't hold it against her in any way, shape, or form. She's not responsible for her. I don't hold her responsible for running me out of the church.
Mm.
She and I got along great for 8 years, and then something changed.
Yeah.
And I think now she's in a care home.
Mm.
I would I would like to figure out how I'm supposed to deal with somebody who's coming for my head and treat them as you would a beloved elder, rather than putting your head down and going, okay, you got me. You know, and I haven't figured that part out.
Well, and of course,
I haven't,
yeah,
I have,
that's not why you're talking to you're not appealing to me for my wisdom on it. And of course, a lot of this is just so interpersonal, and the dynamics are different in every church. And it's oftentimes we want, one fix-all strategy, but so often it requires walking in the Spirit. Sometimes there is no answer, and the church just has to go through a really hard time. So, but it is really
well,
hard.
this is what the DS picked up on. This is what the
Yeah,
DS used against me.
was the
Oh,
fact that
look,
this
they wanted,
old-time member really had an issue with you.
yep,
Yeah. Well, so
yep,
it's just one person. There wasn't like
yes,
a group that galvanized around her.
no.
Okay. But that
One
one
person who
person
had been
spoke with the DS, and
she, she was the SPR chair. She had been for the last 50 years. Um, and it was, she was just done. And there was no why, there was no reasoning, there was no nothing. And
have
the
you seen
church,
the report that I did on Struthers in East Ohio?
I don't think so.
Okay, it came out a couple weeks ago, but the pastor there kind of got railroaded by the DS, and the church was closed against their will. And
I did see that one.
okay,
Yep.
you did see that one. So as you watched that report, and of course you didn't get to be there for the conversation I had with the pastor, but how much did you feel like there was much overlap between strategies or cultures there, or do you feel like what you went through is really quite different?
Uh, I was listening to that and comparing it to
Hmm.
what I had been through, and I think there is a effort to close churches and to live off of the assets of closing churches. I think you're going to see a whole heck of a lot more of it. I think that was the reason to run me out of Plentywood, was to sell that church.
So do you think
I
that
think
they are
that's
going to start a process with them to close them against their will?
oh yeah,
But that hasn't started
I
yet, to your
absolutely
knowledge.
think so.
Okay.
The church is small enough and disorganized enough that I doubt that they will reemerge as something else. Because I mean, you're talking a handful of people. Um,
When
it's unexplainable to me why they chose the path they chose.
the
Uh,
conference or the church?
the church. I and so I think that's why the conference was underneath it, because I don't know what they promised them.
Yeah.
Um,
To what kind of what kind of pastor are you going to get that's willing to take on a 3-point charge? I mean, as one who did it,
yeah,
there are some. I would like to think I was okay, but there are not a lot of pastors willing to take on such a venture, especially if it's a
yeah,
part-time job. It's
it
just
was part time.
yeah. There's just no way that it really is. I mean, there's got to be weeks where you're doing full-time hours, but only getting part-time pay. So that's just infuriating.
Well, that's why I have my own business too. I
Right
mean,
on.
I have my own business. I like being able to provide ministry in areas that can't afford it. Um,
Well, and
I,
that's a gracious thing. So far while we're talking, if I were just to assess what we've said so far, if I was just a random person watching this, I'd say John Nadasi gave me the impression that really Olivito's all right, and that the conference wasn't too overbearing. It's just there are certain systemic pressures at work that are just going to continue to squeeze people and small churches out. Does that sound like a fair characterization of what you experienced, or do you feel like there are?
I I certainly don't have anything personal against the bishop. Um, I'm not sure. I'm putting together these pieces of what was happening
Mhm.
behind the scenes, but I don't know. I can't say with certainty. I wasn't sitting in those meetings that they said, "Let's close the Plentywood Church."
Yeah.
Um, I I'm guessing.
So
I'm
your
guessing
your
because there's a lack of
experiences
communication.
your experiences with conference leadership, DS, cabinet members, you haven't had any like overtly hostile experiences with them. It's all been cordial.
No, I've had one hostile experience,
Okay.
and that was um, it was the meeting after they had told me that I was leaving. The DS took me aside and she dressed me down, um, told me that, and I'm trying really hard to give you the give you the point of what she said, but she was angry. She was visibly angry with me, and told me that it's not up to the church to judge sin, and anybody who saw homosexuality as a sin needed to find another church. And I mean, she was livid, angry with me. And I'm like, the only thing I did was not repeat your liturgy. I've
So it
never
was
tried to lead a charge against the bishop. I didn't try and turn my churches against the bishop. I have right along put what was happening uh, in our church on Facebook, and so people can make their own decisions on what they want. But I've never tried to lead an insurrection against the conference,
right.
and that's how I was treated.
Well, that really is the issue that folks on the left care about is if you are going to talk about sin, and if that talk is anything other than social justice sin,
Oh, yeah,
then
sure.
you're persona non grata. I almost get this sense that they would prefer that you file charges against the bishop than that you preach that homosexuality is a sin from a United Methodist pulpit. For them, that is the most intimately personal, hateful thing that you can do, is to preach biblical doctrine of sin. And so,
Like I said, one of the things I was hoping for from Karen was that she was going to delineate how the line has been moved from here to here
mhm.
and support it biblically and 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 explain to us how she's able to be in the position of authority that she's in. I figured there was at least a story. It doesn't even necessarily mean it would be one that I would buy into, but
Hmm.
at least it would be something.
Yeah.
There's a thought process, um, and there's just not.
She definitely
It's
has a thought
we're gonna do
process.
what we're gonna
How
do what we want to do.
Yeah, that's so there. A lot of this comes down to, and I asked you how much of your church leaned left and how much of it leaned right, and you talked about politics, but I meant mostly religiously, and of course, when you're talking about the right-left division in churches, theologically, it has to do with people on the right believing that there is a truth outside of ourselves that doesn't change based on our personal feelings, that the Bible is God's word and is not subject to our negotiation, that the Christian faith is eternal and unchanging because God is as well. These would be theological hallmarks of the right, and of the left, it would be the Bible is a product of men that can be interpreted through various lenses rightly, and we can change what we understand to be truth and locate it subjectively because God also changes over time. That's the right-left paradigm as it's generally seen. And so there are certain sermons that you can give in a church that leans right, which appeals to an ontological truth, which is founded in the Bible and in a coherent, constant Christian witness throughout the ages, that a left-leaning church is just not going to receive. And then vice versa, there are right-leaning churches that are just not going to receive social justice sermon after social justice sermon and hopping on the latest fad of whatever is on TV. As we're figuring that out politically, the politics do map onto the church. And on far left politics, they don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in rationality or exchange of ideas or an appeal to a truth outside of us that we can all be rooted in. They believe that all of that is white supremacy or patriarchy or appeals to maintaining the status quo. So what it comes down to for them is just power, and that's really all it is. And this is where I'm connecting it to what you were saying, is people like Karen Olivito and far left leadership of the United Methodist Church are just absolutely certain that they're on the right side of history. They don't have to think it through, and they don't have to explain it to you. They're just going to do it. And if they use language along the way, that they can, but they're not beholden to any sort of principles
No.
along the way. And so they just, once they get control of machines, they use those machines to crush whoever stands in the way. And so, but I don't know how much of that you identify with as just an ant that got crushed by the machine, or if you feel like, because an observer from the outside could say, well, average is 7 years, he was there 9, and he had the chance to change the SPRC chair, but he didn't ever do it as pastor, so this seemed like an inevitability. So how much of it feels like just an inevitability to you, regardless of the politics and the left-right stuff? And then how much of it really does feel like you got trapped in this left-right thing that the United Methodist Church is being torn apart by?
Well, I've been in the left-right thing for 25 years. Clergy session at annual conference every year is hard left,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've always just sat in the back and kept my head down.
Mm.
Um, I did my best to play along, to get along. Um, did I get crushed by the machine? Not really. We had a conference maybe 10 years ago where the gentleman that showed up basically said to us, what we're doing is not working. We're in a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a room full of really smart people. If one of you had an answer to this problem, we'd probably know about it by now. And so this church cratering is a known fact. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to him, and that's how I ended up with a small business. I made it a point to have another skill set because I've been expecting the church to roll over and die. And
so as you're recounting this story, you're grateful that he made such a presentation, because
yes,
that's what helped you get
absolutely.
clarity. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember. So I served in Oregon, Idaho until 2015, whenever I moved back over here. But Olivito was appointed there in 2014. Am I remembering that right?
She's been there, what, 3, 4, has it been that long?
I thought so. I just remembered whatever conference she got sent to was immediately out of money, and they were sending out letters to people in other conferences saying, "Hey,
Now
we need."
that did happen.
Yeah, yeah, and just saying, "Hey, if you don't give money, we're gonna have to." And I guess the money came through. I don't know where it came from, but she's still. They haven't redrawn the lines of the annual conference, and she's still a bishop out there. But it just seemed. I mean, I remember when she first got ordained, and the Western jurisdiction was an open rebellion, and I was just like, "This can't maintain. This is all gonna fall apart." And boy, was I wrong. Here we are, almost a decade later, and it doesn't show any signs that it's about to give out. The infrastructure is maintained, and it looks like there's been a complete cultural hegemony claimed by the left out there. What's been your sense with Montana churches, at least? How many of those churches are online with the leftist progressivist program? And then are there conservative churches out there?
I think the churches are a lot more conservative than the clergy.
Mm-hmm.
There is this, there is, it, I liken it to, have you ever hunted pheasant?
No, no.
All right. So pheasants, they're this beautiful bird, and I'm telling you this to answer your question.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with you. Let's do it.
Um, the way a pheasant reacts when you're hunting it, including with the dog, they're fast and they're wily little birds. They're fast. Um, but when they hear somebody getting close to them, they hunker down and they get real small and they get as small as they can. And the goal is for you to walk past them,
Not see them.
not see them.
Yeah.
And they'll hide in a clump of grass that's the size of your shoe. I mean, and they'll find a way to disappear in it.
Mm.
If you don't have a dog, you aren't going to find them.
Mm.
That's the same methodology that the church is using in dealing with the bishop and with the sexuality. It's pulled into this configuration where it's hiding. And this isn't going to come here. It's going to walk right past us.
And in this case, you're
And it
talking
doesn't
about
work
the
for
average
churches.
local
It doesn't
church.
work for churches any better than it works for pheasants.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit and hide and expect that the trouble is going to pass you by. It's a bad plan. So the church here in Miles City, I'm not putting my hands on it. I haven't ever been in the pulpit there. I haven't requested to be in the pulpit because I know that if I show up and I speak, I don't preach from notes. I preach from my heart every Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm going to give what the Holy Spirit gives me when I get up to preach. And so it's probably best that I not try and light a fire in a church that I don't belong to. You know what I mean? They've chosen this tactic of run and hide and hope that it passes them by, and that's what they're going for. This stuff will never come to Miles City. That nobody is going to expect anything of us here. Well, yeah, it is going to come here. Even our curriculum is changing. The United Methodist curriculum for children is going to be LGBTQ. That's going to be in your VBS. That's going to be in your Sunday school materials.
Did you see that General Board of Church and Society actually gave a grant to Reconciling Ministries to create a VBS curriculum that's LGBTQ affirming?
That's what I did. That's what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just that. Well, that's not even the first step. We're just in the middle of this thing where really there's been it's been going in one direction for a while. So yeah, the people on the left listen to people like you and me talk, and they say, "Oh, they're catastrophizing. They're just making it sound like it's all inevitably going this direction, and we're going, well, yeah, we're pretty sure it is.
I just want my children to be safe in church.
Yeah. Well, for
I want my
people on the
kids
left
to be
would
able.
say they are unsafe under a right-leaning program, that they're only safe whenever they're under an affirming program. So that if they come out as trans or gay, they need to know that the church is a safe place. Whereas I would say that if there's that language with worldly gender ideology coming from the pulpit, then we've done them the worst harm of all, because we've convinced them that the world is the church, and that the
Yeah.
world's sexual ethics is going to save them. Whereas you've actually created a cheap counterfeit of the church that actually preaches many opposite messages. It's not just around sexuality. It's around, well, fundamentally, it's around the nature of man, anthropology, the nature of sin, hamartiology, the nature of hell. All of these doctrines are fundamentally corrupted by what is being fostered at the conference level by bishops like Karen Olivito. I've talked with a number of people in other conferences, for example, Arkansas, who've dealt with overtly hostile, nasty, immature behavior from conference leadership. Not the bishop necessarily, but a series of district superintendents and other people that work for the conference office. Sounds to me like that really, there was one point at which your DS snapped, but for the most part, at annual conference, well, you said clergy session is far left. You didn't use the word, you didn't use any negative words beyond, it's a liberal gathering. But your general experience among the annual conference, whether you're talking about the leadership or the collective body of liberal clergy, none of it, as you've described it, is just overtly hostile and nasty on a consistent basis. Would you agree that I've
No,
heard it
I
correctly?
can tell you after 25 years, I can count on one hand how many friends I've made. It's a cold, prickly place for me to be.
So you
I
sit in the
don't
back
I
and you're
don't go.
quiet.
I quit going to annual conference a few years ago. I just quit going.
Mm.
Um, there's nothing there for me.
Yeah, that was also the case with the pastor over at Struthers in Ohio that I reported on. They just stopped going to conference stuff, and so he wondered if that's part of what drew the ire of the conference, where if there's just this quiet rejection of I don't enjoy being with y'all anymore, then
Yep.
perhaps that gets noticed. I really don't know how petty they are or how much they're tracking that, but I will tell you, over here in Oklahoma. We've had upwards of 80 churches leave, disaffiliate over the last year. And there was a lot of hand wringing in the moment, but they just got together for their first session without these 80 churches and their clergy, and they loved it. I watched it online. The remaining liberal ones, and there are still some clergy that are on the right, but they're quiet. They really liked not having to deal with people like me anymore, and so there is, I think they're going to find more and more that they have a vested interest in removing right-leaning people from the room so that they can have a liberal love fest when they get together. And I think they will enjoy that for a while. I also think Lonnie Brooks is right in saying that eventually the progressives are going to eat the liberals for lunch. And well, no, he didn't say that. He said the centrists are going to get devoured by the
Oh yeah.
progressives. So we'll
Can you
see what
imagine
happens.
trying to offset what's coming and try and maintain where we've been in kind of the centrist worldview? I mean, can you imagine trying to maintain that with all the conservatives gone? Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, I don't even know. For so long, the public eye has already seen the United Methodist Church as liberal, as having gone left, So for the last, I've been in ministry for 12 years, 13 years. All along the way, people are surprised to learn that we're not gay affirming, or the United Methodist Church is not gay affirming, or that we actually have a pretty firm against abortion stance, because whether or not that's on paper, the United Methodist Church has already been, the
Sure.
PR campaign has already been far left. Now they're actually going to get to deal with the implications of that now that there isn't right-leaning people on the inside, and we'll see how long it can be sustained past this point. So, I don't have a magic ball, and I already said I've been surprised at how how robust the Western jurisdiction has been after they've been so far left. So who knows? I just know I'm not going to be a part of it, and now you're not going to be a part of it. So, what do you think? We should probably get close to ending our time together. But what do you think is important for someone who's spent this hour with you? What are takeaway lessons that you would like to pass along to clergy who are in the shoes that you were in? Or what are some things that you think are worthy of at least reflecting on? What are you reflecting on now?
I'll give a shameless plug for the GMC. It it's as far as I'm concerned, it was my only option. And I don't want to say it like that because it sounds like it's not like I had to pick between good and bad or bad and worse. Um, I'm Methodist. I'm born, raised, educated Methodist. I haven't abandoned the church. I still could see myself in a church, pastoring a church. Um, Whether I will or not, I don't know. I mean, I'm up here in Montana by myself. Um, but the biggest thing, there's this leap that you have to make to jump from United Methodist to the Global Methodist, where you don't necessarily know how you're going to land. It's a leap of faith, and I don't know how this is going to turn out. As of right now, I'm not appointed to any church. I don't even know who my bishop is. I don't know the name of the conference that I'm in. All I know is I've received a letter through the mail that I've been accepted, and at some point I'll see a certificate. Beyond that, I'm living by faith.
Yeah, you have two bishops, Webb and Jones. They are considered bishops of the whole church, and they don't have regions. They've chosen different functions for the time being, but it's not going to operate the same way as the United Methodist Church, where there is a bishop over a conference. I don't know. So the region I'm in right now is not even a provisional annual conference. It's called a Transitional Conference Advisory Team, TCAT. And there are churches in this region that we're trying to mobilize and connect together to become a provisional annual conference that will then, at some point in the future, become an actual annual conference. I'm not aware of anything developing in your neck of the woods that resembles that. So I think, well, the Western, to my knowledge, your annual conference doesn't even have hardly any churches trying to disaffiliate, right?
I don't think so. I think the only disaffiliations I'm aware of is me and one other pastor. As far as other churches go, I have no idea.
And the policy there was that the bishop's office wouldn't even give you your numbers until you've already gone through the disaffiliation vote. Does that sound right?
Give you your numbers
as to what you owe with respect to pension liability and any health expenses and the buyout for the church.
We never got that far. I was booted before we ever got that far.
Well, did your churches even start the disaffiliation process?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they were expecting to be able to tell the DS that we're going to disaffiliate, and they were just going to say, okay, we're going to put you into Group B. And it's like, I don't know what they were thinking. They were following somebody with early dementia, is what they did.
So they wanted to disaffiliate, but they just didn't take the time or put the energy in to actually research what the implications were there?
Correct.
That's really a shame, and that's so common. I get a lot of mail from people saying, hey, what you're doing is great. I'm trying to tell people in my church to look at this stuff, and they don't know anything. They don't want to read anything. They don't want to watch anything. You compared them to pheasants. I've heard them much more commonly referred to as ostriches, just sticking their head in the ground. I guess apparently that's a lie. Ostriches don't do that, but churches do, and it's not going to work out well for them. But I don't appreciate right-leaning voices that are just like, you got to get out, man. I just think a lot of churches, if they can't do their research, if they can't be proactive, then this is what happens. I'm not sure we want churches like that joining the GMC and replicating the same mistakes in the GMC that you see in the UMC. And that sounds cruel, but it's another hard place of running the church. What do you do with an older member who is not herself and behaving toxic? Do you just roll over and hope she leaves you alone, or do you have to say and do some things that are very uncomfortable? If you have churches that are not willing to do uncomfortable things, then there does come a point where that church is not able to faithfully follow Jesus. So
Yep.
it's a hard thing. I wish it had gone different for you, John, but I'm also pretty happy for you that you get this time off. It sounds like you needed it, brother.
I needed it. I needed more than a sabbatical. So it's worked out. And I've told people God orders my footsteps. I don't carry any bitterness towards the local church. I understand what Bishop is doing. I would have, like I said, I was somebody that could have gone either direction. If it was a question of them saying we're moving the line from here to here, and what we're going to include is marriage between same-sex couples, and everything else we're going to leave the same. Would you be willing to? And honestly, my response to that would be I still won't perform the wedding,
Right.
but I might go to one and check it out.
I think I saw in your conference, did they pass something saying that if you're not willing to do the wedding, that you have to at least refer them to somebody else? Or was that another conference up in the Northwest?
That must have been someone else.
Okay. All right.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's that goalpost being moved. Well, that's not the right metaphor, but you think you know where you stand, and they're saying we'll never compel you to act against your conscience, but if you're having
they will.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, they will. They're saying now that they're not going to compel anyone to do anything, and that it's still going to be up to the pastor. No, it's not.
No.
You're absolutely going to be compelled.
Yeah.
You're going to be compelled at the local church level, and if not at the local church, then by your DS or a bishop. But I was compelled to read a liturgy that I chose not to read, and that was enough.
So she did put you in the position. She was looking at you saying, "You read this liturgy," and then you just said, "No, I won't."
Well, they put it on the wall to see who would read it, and she must have been staring at me the whole time because I was looking at my shoes. I don't read anything from the annual conference unless I've read it ahead of time.
Yeah, I got into
years of experience of liberal United Methodist theology being put up by a PowerPoint. I won't touch it.
My old bishop,
read it first.
My old bishop sent out letters from time to time to the local church, and I would get them and I'd read them and I'd be like, "That's fine," I wouldn't think anything of it. And then I learned later he sent out a thing saying, "It is my expectation that you read these from the pulpit." Just like, really? My church benefited from not getting sucked into conference affairs. I just didn't tell them much about what the bishop said or did. I think they would have found it frustrating. And then at that point, it became willful disobedience on my part just to go, it's not very good. Why would I read this? This is just going to confuse them and make them angry. So, it seems strange when they're simultaneously wanting churches to feel like everything's okay and everything's going to stay the same, but then they're insisting on changing the liturgy and changing the undergirding theology of all of our gatherings together. It's just a weird dissonance that it's no surprise that so many churches choose to stop attending annual conference. It becomes an indoctrination time rather than sharing in Wesleyan doctrine time. So,
well, they really think that it's up to them to decide the things that God is going to decide. The left truly thinks that God values their opinion, and they're in for a big surprise because I absolutely believe in Judgment Day.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely believe I'm going to stand in front of God and give an account for my life and what I've done here.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely believe that I'm going to be held accountable for how I've treated other people.
Mhm.
Um, I, if it weren't for the grace of Jesus Christ, none of us would get through it.
Right?
I'm evangelical to the bone.
Yeah.
Um, this isn't a place for me anymore, though. I mean, it's become something else where I can't function anymore. I can't be open enough in my theology of other people to accept what's happening in the church and still call myself a Christian. Um,
Yeah, I think what I'm suspecting is going to happen is that lots of folks like you are going to get loose of the UMC and realize, oh, my faith was compromised this whole time to a degree that I just couldn't even see until I was free of it. You know,
yeah,
which is an unfortunate thing, but it's also a wonderful thing to be free of now. So I'm going to be optimistic about you and your ministry and the, I don't know, hundreds or maybe thousands of people that are getting free that resemble you very much. And we'll see what God does with me. I'd like to think that He's going to bear fruit in me, but I'm just glad to be along for the ride. And
well, your videos are spectacular,
oh,
Jeffrey.
thanks, John. I wasn't fishing,
My
so
we sit up and watch that at our house. That's probably your show is our favorite show right now. I mean, it's because it's relevant to our life, you
I
know? I mean,
appreciate
it's
that.
like this is us. This is our life. This is what we're dealing with.
Mm,
And so as my last shameless plug that I put out
yeah, do it.
there for myself, if you're a bishop or a DS and you're somewhere warm where I'm not going to fall on the ice and blow my rot rotator cuff out, give me a call. I'm
How do you want them to find you?
open to new possibilities. Probably on Facebook would be the easiest way. Send me a message on Facebook. Actually, anybody who wants to follow me on Facebook that's reading this, just put GMC in the subject line, and I'll that's my primary social media that I use is Facebook.
Right on.
Um, send me a message on there. Uh, and like I said, identify yourself as GMC, and I'll put you through.
Perfect. Well, let's draw our time to a close. I asked your daughter's names before. I didn't ask your wife's name.
Mary.
Mary. Okay, I just wanted to pray over you and Mary and your household, and then we'll end the broadcast and just chat for a little bit more, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Father, I thank you for the time John and I have had together, and for his words of affirmation for me, and I sure hope he feels affirmed by me and by the new colleagues and clergy he has in the Global Methodist Church. He and many others find themselves in a liminal place. They're not sure the particulars of where you're leading, but they do know that you are the leader. And so I pray that you would give John and other clergy who have found their way out of the United Methodist Church submissive spirits, humble spirits to go where you were leading. And I want to ask blessing upon John in particular and his wife Mary, and upon Pat and Reagan and their household as they've been in the United Methodist Church all their shared lives together, and now they're going to figure out what life looks like outside of that, and that can be exciting and that can be really depressing, and I'm sure that they've had both moments and they're going to have more. But I know, Father, that as they lean upon you, there's going to be a lot of comfort, a lot of healing, and a lot of joy in the future. And so I look forward to seeing what that looks like for John and his family, and for the families that find themselves being hopeful about the GMC. And we just pray that even though this moment in history, Lord, looks fraught and anxious and unhappy, we pray that there would be a bright future ahead for the Methodist movement, that we would once again reclaim the heritage we have with the Holy Spirit and with the doctrine and discipline with which we first set out. So, Lord, see fit to guide our footsteps despite our unworthiness, that your name would be glorified and that we might spread scriptural holiness across the land once again. We ask these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thanks for joining me and John. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. If you have any additional thoughts about stuff that we covered or didn't cover, go ahead and leave it in the comments. If you know somebody who is going through anything resembling this, just go ahead and send this video along to them. My whole purpose in this is to try and and be helpful and healing and drive people towards holiness. So thanks for helping me do that. Thanks for spending time with us. God bless you. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jeffrey.